All right, welcome. Been a while. We're back. We're back and rocking here. And today we are sitting around ranking and talking none other than the Clown Prince of Rock, Mr. Joe Walsh. And to help me do that, look who we got here, guys. Our usual friends here, Mr. David Hens, Mr. Tom Jennings.
That's alphabetical, right? So I announce David before me.
No, I like him better than you. Sorry. No, I just kidding.
But seriously, folks, no, I'm just kidding.
But seriously, folks, nice segue there.
Thank you.
All right. So, what did you think on ranking this catalog, David?
It was there were a few I hadn't really listened to in a long time, so I had to go back and kind of go through them again. There's like half the catalog I really like, and the rest is just kind of in the middle for me. But I mean, there's nothing like truly stinker album here, but some I definitely don't really care for.
Good way of putting it. What about you, Tom? Were you surprised that? Did you find yourself learning something new about Joe Walsh?
It was an interesting catalog in that in some ways he reminds me of Eric Clapton. He always falls a few songs short of really putting together a good collection of songs. I mean, he has a couple albums near the top that I really like from beginning to end, but he had some filler. We'll just put it that way.
As we will see as we go on here, that's for sure.
Sometimes his tendency to get involved in a lot of jokes and humor kind of gets the best of him a little bit. So
I would say that especially on his later, like his 90s catalog, definitely, he kind of took things a little to the extreme. And I think that's probably what kind of hurt those albums in particular, in my estimation, but we'll see what you guys have to say about that. But anyhow, we are definitely talking and honoring Joe Walsh here. In my opinion, one of the great guitar players of our time. Doesn't get a lot of his total just due with his solo career, but obviously being a member of the Eagles definitely helps put his resume, makes it a lot stronger case with everything here.
Let's not forget the James Gang. That was a pretty important band as well.
Yeah, and that's another band who doesn't really ever, you hear a few songs on the radio these days, but they got, they carried on after Joe left for an album or two, but they're definitely, you're right. That's where Joe's beginnings really, start, because he recorded with them before he went solo and before he became a member of the Eagles and all that. So, all right, well, let's dig right in. We got 11 albums to rank. And what do you got for number 11, David? Let's start it off.
All right, number 11, I got Any Gum from 1987. I went back and listened to this again. I mean, it's got that 80s synth production. It just sounds terrible to me. I just can't really get into it. There's a lot of filler on here. I mean, I kind of liked his guitar solo on Fun, but really, I mean, nothing about this album kind of stands out at all. So,
okay. What do you got for Tom? What do you got for number 11? Are you gonna agree with David like you always do usually, or?
Yeah, you know what? Don't even ask me. I'm just gonna say ditto. No, actually, no. We do diverge on this first one. The one I have is Songs for a Dying Planet, and some good moments on here. Just, I don't know, man. It just doesn't, it's just way too much filler. I like the title cut, Song for a Dying Planet. In fact, even though it's a small one, it's only a couple minutes long. But I just think the rest of it, I don't know, it just was not real cohesive. And I think by the early 90s, he was still pretty much in the throes of alcoholism, and it just kind of shows.
Okay. Well, we're starting off in fine style here. All three different number 11s. And for mine, I've got the 1985 album, The Confessor.
Oh,
as my choice.
And hold on a minute. I got to get the defibrillator. What? Are you serious?
Well, I wouldn't have said it if I was serious. This is an April Fool's
I know.
Day.
Oh my God.
No, you know what? I liked the album when it came out and throughout the years, but when I really sat down and gave it a couple listens, because it's been a little while since I heard it. Nothing really, The Confessor, great song, no doubt. I've seen him do it live. Phenomenal song, The Confessor. He's got a couple that are okay on there, and then the rest is just filler. I mean, I just couldn't get into the album. Slow Dancing's got to be one of the worst Joe Walsh songs ever. He tried doing a cover of a Michael Stanley song, Rosewood Bitters. Did okay with it, but it just didn't really resonate with me. The only other song I found myself even remotely thinking was okay was 15 Years, which was pretty cool. But once again, for some reason, and it kind of must have showed, because this is the tour when I first saw him, where he played like a full set, and he only played The Confessor off this album. So he must have not thought too highly of it either, to not play anything else in concert at this point in time, because it wasn't like his solo shows where he was playing all Eagles songs or anything like that. Actually, far from it. I think maybe Life in the Fast Lane, but that was about it. He usually just played whenever he had a solo show back in that area, he was always just focusing in on his solo material. And he decided that nothing else, I guess, was good enough. So that was the only song we got, was The Confessor. So unfortunately, that's what I got for number 11. Let's mosey on down to David and number 10.
All right, number 10, I got Songs of a Dying Planet from 92. I think the only song that really kind of resonated with me on this album is Decades, and it's like a 12-minute ballad, which is not something you'd really expect from him, but I mean, it's almost kind of like the lyrics are, he's going through like a history lesson of like war, and just he goes through like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and then up to the 90s. So it's kind of like a narrative song, and it's kind of interesting. But I mean, the rest of it is definitely filler. I mean, Shut Up, Vote for Me, Fairbanks, Alaska. That one feels like Life's Been Good Part 2, just kind of a rehash of old ideas. And like even like the opening track, Shut Up. I mean, when he sings, he's got a good voice, but he's doing a lot of screaming on this album, and that's not really appealing to me. So I feel like he's kind of forcing it. So yeah, that's my number 10.
Okay, so you guys were close, because Tom had that as
Yep.
number 11. So you're definitely in the ballpark there. And what do we got for your number 10 there, Tom?
Ordinary Average Guy.
What?
Yeah, Ordinary Average Guy. Yeah,
right.
1991. Again, I just think his latter career stuff just was not. I guess this would be post Eagles too, right?
Well, yeah, anything from 1979 to the long run up until Road Out of Eden, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know, just not, and I hate the title cut. Always hated the title cut. Really nothing on this record has jumped out on me. I mean, I don't know. It's not, I guess it's interesting that the title has the word average in it, because to me, it just really comes off as a very average record. There's nothing really special on it.
All right. Interesting. All right. Well, let me give you my number 10, and we'll actually see something come in alignment, almost like the planets are coming in alignment here. But for number 10 for me, we've got Songs for a Dying Planet. So we all picked that one pretty much almost right in a row here. So I guess that's a consensus there that album is definitely, one of the weaker ones of his catalog, obviously. 1992 is the only album that failed the chart out of his solo career, actually, believe it or not. Something, a little food for thought there. Bill Simchek, Joe Vitale helped Walsh produce that album. I don't know. This album, like you said, Songs for Dying Planet. When I'm picking Vote for Me as the best song on the album, that tells you that there's not much good on the album, because he basically rehashed the his big theme that he used to do back in the Eagles days. He was running for vice president and all this stuff on a live album, if you remember all those good quotes there. I will say, even though it's a cover and, what's he doing this song for? I'll give it an honorable mention. I thought he did a good job on it. Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? He did all right with it. Not like it's one of those covers where you hear it and you go, turn it off. It's all right. Interesting note here was that Jimmy Jameson from Survivor actually did some background vocals on this album, and I guess they got a relationship that went back a little bit here. But yeah, other than that, there's a song on here called "End of." Certain situations. The end of it has like a Morse code message, and what it's saying is register vote for me if you're able to translate that. I thought that was a little little odd there, but that's Joe and his humor and all that stuff that always ties into it. But unfortunately, luckily we got one more album after this album from Joe, at least out of his solo career, or else it would have been Songs for a Dying Solo Career. So yeah, so that's what I got for my number 10, and let's get into the number 9 now.
Number 9.
Number 9, I went with Ordinary Average Guy. I mean, pretty much everything that Tom said. There's really very little memorable on here. It's just kind of, I mean, I feel like at this point he was just burned out, kind of grasping for ideas. And I mean, they're between the Ordinary Average Guy and Songs for a Dying Planet. I feel like that was, I mean, they're both kind of the same album. Nothing really stands out to me. So
yeah, and they were made a year apart too. So
yeah,
it's right around that same time frame. All right, it'll be interesting. Let's see what Tom has for his number 9 here.
Number 9, I have, and I just want to say before I say what the album is, it is probably one of my favorite album titles of any artist. Got Any Gum? I just love that title.
Yes, I agree.
It really is just, I remember when it came out, that one, and You Bought It, You Name It. I mean, you can say what you want about his the quality of his music, but man, this dude knew how to name some records. I don't know. It's just a really funny name of a record, but it's, I don't know, it's just not, again, same thing that we've kind of talked about with the other stuff from this era. And I'm double checking. This is 87. And just nothing really jumping out. I mean, he just seemed to have a problem just coming up with catchy songs or anything that was even somewhat original. Everything's just very formulaic and, blah.
So Tom loves the title, but not the album. So
I don't hate it, but it's just not, again, it's not, it's not great.
All right. So for my number 9, I'm going backwards here, like you guys kind of went already. Ordinary Average Guy. Number 112 is where it reached on the chart. So that tell you anything? 1991. One place better than the previous album, which was Got Any Gum. So now you could just tell that he definitely had a solo career that was flaming out there. With Ordinary Average Guy, he produced it along with Joe Vitale, the drummer. I would say the Gamaguchi, one of the songs on the album, if you're not familiar with it, is just pure drivel. Best tune actually probably would be Look At Us Now. It actually got a lot of airplay off 97 Rock. I don't think you guys can honestly say that song just totally sucks or anything. I think that's the standout on the album. Even if you don't like anything else on it, I would have to say that one would stand out the best. Title cut, honorable mention. The song got airplay. I mean, he did it with Glenn Frey on a tour before. They went out and toured together, and he came out and did that song at the end. And All of a Sudden is another honorable mention. He did that song. That song was actually written with Jimmy Jameson from Survivor, who I mentioned before. So they had a relationship there in that area there. But it's just like you guys said, David hit it, you hit it. It's just nothing other than the few songs that I mentioned. The rest of it, he was better off releasing an EP, I guess, at that point. Just nothing, just an ordinary average album, basically.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go down to number 8. What do you got? Anything
Oh
good?
yeah, I thought I lost my feed for a second there.
Oh, okay.
All right. Yeah, my number 8 is "You Bought It, You Name It." From it's 1983. It is. I mean, Space Age for WizKids is pretty good. I mean, that's it's okay. It's got kind of that like definitely new wave, kind of almost like reggae influence to it. But "Told You So" was a good song from the album. It's like an outtake from The Long Run that he wrote with Don Felder. I kind of like that one a lot. But again, I mean, I'm not. For me, I think the '70s Joe Walsh. It seems like just he had more. Just he had a better feel for what he was trying to say in the '70s and the '80s. It was like the production values just kind of. It's not really for me. I like his guitar to be a little bit rawer. So yeah, the '80s albums just don't really hold up for me that much.
Mr.
Well,
Jennings.
first time we're in agreement. Yay! You Bought It, You Name It. I remember hearing this title too. I thought that it was again just a great title, kind of funny. And I remember him doing interviews for this particular record. But yeah, I really like, and I'm gonna echo in that Space Age Whiz Kids is the song on the record that I like. But yeah, for the most part, it's just we're going into okay territory as opposed to territory with some of the previous ones that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard with him too that, if you think about it, a guy like Joe Walsh, especially when you start looking at his solo career, is that, I mean, he's so defined by his time in the Eagles, and he did a lot of, between James Gang songs and a couple of solo songs would always find their way into the Eagles set list. But even the stuff that he contributed to the Eagles was really, really good. So I think it almost hurt his solo career when you hear how good some of that stuff that he did with the Eagles. It feels like he saved all the really good songs for that project, or maybe he just works better in a band situation. Because I mean, technically Barnstorm was a band. And I believe you guys will probably have those records ranked fairly high. I mean, because we haven't ranked any of them yet. Then you have the James Gang records, which he was on, which were all pretty good, and all the Eagles records he were on were classics. So I just think it was a little tougher when it was just him in the studio to really maybe to rein him in, because I mean we know that he did struggle with alcohol and drug addiction. I mean, I know alcohol. I don't know if he was a drug addict. I don't want to pick on poor Joe.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to my number 8 here. And I'm going back where you guys were with Got Any Gum. So this is like, we're pretty much kind of closer than we've ever been on any of the catalogs. So this is interesting. Can't wait to see what we got going forward here. But 8 for me, Got Any Gum. Like I mentioned, it was number 113, The Ordinary Average Guy, which 4 years later was his next release solo wise, fared one spot better. So I think you can kind of put them right next to each other. And I think both we actually did. We all put them like kind of like right next to each other, kind of. So they're very similar in that kind of a respect. But obviously, it was a very big commercial disappointment. Unfortunately, because when I remember when the album came out, I ended up getting the cassette. That was back in the cassette days, and I like the first part of it. I think the first few songs stand out the best on that album. And then kind of once it starts going past, well, actually, past the first 3, pretty much, pretty much, you don't want to listen to it anymore, unfortunately. But I'll tell you this though about this album. It was produced by Terry Manning. I got to go with "In My Car" is probably my favorite song. And if you guys know, or if you're familiar, that song was actually written along with Ringo. It's actually a Ringo Starr. It was on his one of his solo albums from 1983. And if you listen to that version, it's very similar to this one. It just seems like they spiced it up a little bit, made it a little bit more modern. But yeah, I mean, and obviously you got Joe singing as opposed to Ringo. But I thought Joe did the song. I think Joe's version is just a little bit better. I don't know. Are you familiar with that song, Tom?
I mean, I know I must have listened to it. We were going back through the catalog, but I will say this. I mean, the fact that he re-recorded a song from that he'd given to Ringo, who's his brother-in-law, in case anybody didn't know that. It kind of shows that he really lacked enough material for a record. I mean, to me, like when you record a song that you wrote years before, it's because you don't have anything else to record.
And they used that as a lead-off track, and ironically enough, which was kind of strange. But yeah, so so that's my take on Got Any Gum. The first three songs, like I said, In My Car the best, the radio song, fun. I would give it Up to Me, maybe another honorable mention. But after that, not. No, I don't want any gum, Joe. So let's go to number 7 here. Let's see how close we are the rest of the way.
All right, number 7, I have The Confessor. I mean, I really like the title track. I think it's one of the strongest cuts from his entire solo catalog, but really the whole side one, I just don't find very interesting at all. I mean, slow dancing is terrible. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's like he has like so much potential to be able to put together a record from start to finish that is like worth listening to, but he always kind of, it never quite comes together until but yeah, I mean, like Rosewood Bitters is like a song from side 2 that I kind of like too, but overall that one's not up there with his best material. So
yep, that's why I had it at number 11. Tom, what do you got for us?
I don't have it at number 11, but I'll get to my take on that record pretty soon. Oh, let's pull up the old list here. I have Analog Man. Analog Man. And I don't, I'm kind of getting into territory of records that I'm starting to like a little bit more. And Analog Man, I remember getting a copy of this record when it came out, a CD copy, because that's back when we used to still get CD copies for review. And he had been doing, I think there was one of the songs on, I can't remember which one it was. It was the one about his sobriety. He had been performing that with the Eagles before he came out with this record. Yeah, One Day at a Time. Okay, thank you, David. Mm-hmm. But I just, I felt like there's a, this is, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to put this in a way that doesn't sound goofy, but yeah, I mean, David touched on the fact that Joe sometimes would try too hard to be funny. Like he would really, just go a little bit too over the top, kind of like the guy that, is at the party and telling the jokes, and it's just a little too much. And this record, you could tell that he was sort of dialing back humor, and he took it a little bit more seriously. So I think overall the effort was there. I think the material was better than the late stages of his solo career, which is why I ranked it where I did. But it was almost like it was just a little bit too little, a little bit too late. But I think if he had kind of cleaned up his act maybe a little bit earlier in his solo career, he could have put out some better material. But I think with Analog Man too, I mean, at least there had to be a part of him that felt like he had something to say, because he hadn't come out with an album for a while. And he was clean and sober. And I think at that point he was touring with Ringo and stuff like that. And the Eagles were starting to do some shows again. So maybe he just felt a little bit more revitalized, and even working with the Eagles, maybe made him step up his game a little bit more.
All right. I think we're going to have to stop the presses here. I agree. Number 7, Analog Man.
Here, drum roll.
Me and Jennings agreeing on an album this high up. Usually we're nice. Near the bottom of the list, but usually in the middle or the upper echelon, we never agree. So, but yeah, Analog Man, just like you had mentioned, number 12, believe it or not, this is his 3rd highest charting solo album. That's interesting, especially considering at the time when it came out, 2012. But when you got Jeff Lynne producing, man, you're probably going to have a pretty good hit on your hands, or it's going to demand to be heard and purchased, I guess.
Well, I think the Eagles' career being revitalized at that point didn't hurt either. I mean, he was especially in the reunion years, he definitely carried a much bigger role than he did in previous years, especially after Don Felder was gone.
Yeah. So we got Ringo appearing on 2 tracks on the album. Of course, that doesn't hurt when you you know, you have got Ringo playing on there, because that's enough to get people to buy it if they're a Beatles completist. Lucky That Way, I would say, is probably the best song on the album, to me at least. Analog Man, Band Played On, the aforementioned One Day at a Time. So there's some pretty good strong material on here out of the 10 songs on the album. Funk 50 was interesting, because you know, he took a spin on the old James Gang song. Funk 49, 48. He's got all these different funks, you know, it's crazy. But yeah, so that's what I got for the Analog Man, number 7. Mark this one down. Me and Jennings agree.
On this day in history.
Yeah, there you go. So let's go to number 6.
Yeah, number 6, I had Analog Man.
Oh,
So we're
interesting.
pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, I like Jeff Lynne's production on this album. It's got a nice crisp guitar sound. I mean, the title track is pretty good. One Day at a Time's heartfelt. I mean, Spanish Dancer is another song I kind of like off of it. I mean, I think the 20-year gap between Songs for a Dying Planet to Analog Man, I mean, when you listen to it, he sounds like refreshed, kind of revitalized, as Tom said. And you definitely get the feeling that he's like, this is like kind of like his Try Harder album, where he's trying to take himself a little more seriously. So, I mean, it's not a perfect album, but I think it's definitely as good as you could have expected, given how long it had been since you put out a previous solo album. So it's decent.
Yep. All right. What about you, Tom? What do you got here?
I got Barnstorm.
1972 Barnstorm. Tell us about why you got it there. What's the
Well, I got to bring it up so I can remember why. I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I was hoping I could just say the album and then we can move on.
Oh,
quietly.
That's what you should have done with your Got Any Gum.
I know, man. I'm just like, oh, hold on a second.
When you got a good album like Barnstorm, you want to talk about it.
Yeah. No, it's a good album. Oh, jeez, hold on a minute. What is on this record, Tom? What is it that made you put it here?
Yeah, what made you put it there?
I'm going to say from here on out, most of these Joe Walsh records I really like, and I have a decent amount of Joe Walsh records in my collection, including this one, of course. Oh, let's see what's on it. Oh, this is one that has Turn to Stone on it. Midnight Visitor. Here we go. Yeah, so he recorded this one. This is with Barnstorm, the band. This is the one he recorded out in Colorado. It's interesting. I think in some ways this might be the record that kind of pushed him or put him into favor with the Eagles, you know what I mean? Because he definitely sounded a little more folky and Colorado-ish. I think that, man, it's hopefully this makes sense. I try to offer takes that actually are semi-meaningful, but I think people forget how much a geographic region can have on a recording. Like where you record it can impact how it sounds and its character. So, you know, we all know the song Rocky Mountain Way. I mean, that's because, you know, he was in Colorado, but I think this particular record, if I remember correctly, he was like in a cabin in the woods of Colorado, just kind of isolated, and it just was a little folkier. And, you know, the James Gang was known as this sort of 3-piece. I wouldn't even call them a power trio. They were just more like a garage band. And so I think he was trying to move to something that was a little more singer-songwriter, a little more serious. And, you know, I think the songs reflect that. I think it's good material. Not a ton of standout tracks per se in my mind, but there's nothing on here that stands out in a negative way either, which I think we can say that on parts of the lower bits of the catalog is that there's always, you know, a couple of clunkers that Joe seems to throw in. And I can't think of a clunker on this particular record unless You guys can. So there you go.
All right. All right, so that is your number 6 with Barnstorm. I'm actually got a different album at my number 6. We're going to go back to 1983, and you bought it, you name it. I haven't decided what I was going to name it yet, but I bought it. Yeah, actually, you know what? This album is really hard to find. Actually, believe it or not, it's a hard to find album right now. I don't know how the vinyl situation is, but because CD, it's almost impossible to find it. If you do find it, you're probably paying like over $100 for it. That's how hard it is to find. Believe
Really?
me.
What year did that come out?
83, because CDs, most of them weren't at that point. It never initially came out on CD. I actually had it on cassette, and I was always going to convert it over to CD, but I never was able to find a copy that I could afford. I guess.
I just saw a vinyl copy recently at a store I was at, and I think it was like $10.
Okay, nice. Yeah, at least it's on vinyl. That's for sure. That's good. I wasn't quite sure, because sometimes things are harder to find on vinyl or hard. It depends. It depends exactly what medium you're looking for when you're trying to find out on that. But getting back to the album itself, there's no doubt the song that I always heard off of it and enjoyed, and it's on his box set and everything. That would be the I Can Play That Rock and Roll. I don't know. I really think that's a great song. He really has a great riff to it. He sings it well, and that's definitely, I think, the highlight of the album overall for me. And of course, there's ILBTs, which that's one that a lot of females probably wouldn't care for too much. But he still sings. He was playing it live, during a period of his career. Let's put it that way. We usually would save it for the encore too, but interesting song. But it's definitely one of those ones that stand out of his whole catalog because of the subject matter. Theme from Boat Weirdos. I mean, I don't know where this guy comes up with these titles from, but that song is actually one of the better songs on the album, which I don't think I don't remember if any of you guys had brought it up at all or not, but you guys had mentioned like Space Age Whiz Kids, I believe. Which to me, that song, it's okay, but there just isn't enough on this album to get it any higher, because obviously all the albums from here on out, in my estimation, they're all very good to great in my estimation. This one being good, and then we just get better as we get deeper here. The top 5 is pretty good, as Ted would say, gold is what my friend Ted would say. But yeah, you bought it, you name it. Number 6 reached number 48, and actually Don Henley and Timothy B. Schmidt also appear on they appear on a song. Let me think of which one it was here. Here We Are Now. So they play on that one, and obviously I think Tom mentioned that he played, or David, one of you guys mentioned about Told You So. It was written with Felder, who also plays on the track as well. So that was pretty cool to see, because obviously this was after the breakup of the Eagles, but at least these guys were still talking and working on each other's projects and stuff. So that was pretty cool. So we're gonna crack.
I will say you've taught me something, because I just looked it up on Discogs while you were talking, and this is bizarre. I mean, you can find the vinyl for 99 cents, and there's copies of the CD going for $160. There's like a German reissue for $160. The lowest price copy I could find is $55 for this CD.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. And the only thing I could think is this might have been around the time that not every record was put out on CD, because I think vinyl was still, as I'm trying to think of the stuff I was buying at the time. I mean, 83 is like Asia for Yes 90125. I think vinyl was still the predominant medium. So I don't know, maybe they just didn't press that many copies of it on CD. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think there was an initial release, but nowadays the only thing you can usually find is, like you said, that import version, and that's even scarce. Very hard to find.
I don't see a listing for an original US issue of this on CD. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe if somebody knows anything out there in the comments, maybe that's the case. It was just I'm kind of surprised too. Usually when you see a CD or something like that that spikes to that level, maybe one of the smaller houses reissues it and sells it for 20-30 bucks. But wow, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
Man.
whoever his record company was, he did the anthology album, and he's got a few of the songs from that album
Yeah,
on there.
Warner. It's Warner Brothers.
Yeah, but other than that,
Hmm.
there's not much of anything else out there. Interestingly enough, so yeah, I guess they didn't think they would sell enough copies to do another pressing of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. As I said, obviously they pressed plenty of vinyl because the vinyl is cheaper than dirt, but it is. I mean, it's the vinyl prices are 99 cents. It says last copy that was sold was $1.99. The highest it's ever sold for on vinyl is $25. I'm assuming that was like a promo, but the median value is $5.
Interesting.
So yeah, no, it is. It's weird, like how albums. It's funny because I think a lot of people forget with records that they think sometimes that the more popular ones would be the more valuable ones, but that's not the case. Supply and demand. I mean, if there was a record that they thought was going to be popular and then they punched out a whole bunch of copies of it and did a second, third, fourth press, it just becomes less valuable. But this one's a head scratcher. Yeah, it's weird. It's got to be a timing thing, I guess.
All right, we're gonna do our top five. This should really get good here. What do you got for your number five, Dave?
Yeah, all these top five, this is where the strongest part of the catalog comes in for me. I think he really did his best work here. So at number five, I have There Goes the Neighborhood from '81. Yeah, Life of Illusion was the big hit off this album for him. I really like Rockets, and Rivers of the Hidden Funk is a song that he wrote with Don Felder. I think that's pretty solid. I mean, his guitar soloing on here is good. You can definitely tell he was motivated. So yeah, that's my number five.
Okay.
You know what I got to say to that, David? So what? See what I did there?
Yeah.
So
you just named your number
what?
five.
Yeah, welcome to the club, guys. Help me through the night on this one, would you? So what? Yeah, love this record too. So what? So what? Just another one that, well, this one looks like it was recorded in Los Angeles. But again, kind of moving towards that California. It's weird. I mean, we didn't discuss it, but we all know where Joe Walsh is from, right?
Cleveland.
Yeah, he's like Ohio, man. then he just then he gets associated with Colorado, and then he winds up as like this integral part of the California music scene. So this is kind of where I think he's definitely become somewhat entrenched in the whole New York thing. But yeah, this is a good album. I enjoy it. County Fair is one of those songs that I just really really like a lot. Song for Emma, which is the closer on the record's a good one as well. Turn the Stones on here. All Night Laundromat Blues. I mean, just good solid record. And I agree with David. I think with the top five, he definitely put out some good stuff. And this is pre-Eagles, so early solo stuff.
Yeah. All right. So there you go for your number five. So I've got Barnstorm. Came out in '72 and reached number 79. So not bad for an album. That it's a whole new project, whole new group, and it was his first album following Joe leaving the James Gang. Produced by none other than Bill Simchek, who obviously did a lot of the Eagles stuff, and Joe's worked with him throughout his whole career from that period of time. As far as the songs that I think that on this one that stand out, I think Bird Call Morning has to be one of the great rock travesties because it's such a great song, but when would you ever turn it on classic rock radio and hear it? You figure that would be a staple on classic rock radio. Yet I wasn't even familiar with it until I actually had a copy of the Barnstorm album. I don't know how you guys, if you guys were familiar with it before that or not, Tom or Dave.
No, yeah, the Barnstorm album was the first time I ever heard it. So
Yeah, I just find it's really
Mhm.
odd when you discover a song that that you never really knew before, and then you go, man, they play such same old songs on classic rock. I mean, these radio stations can really expand their catalog and really make things a little bit more interesting. Let's say if they were to really play the music that actually is deserving to be played instead of hearing, just as an example, Guns N' Roses for the thousandth time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on now, these classic rock radio stations got to wake up here. But
Well, it used to be called album oriented rock
right,
because you would play album cuts, but they don't really play album cuts anymore. I mean, Stairway to Heaven's technically an album cut, but you know what I mean? It's like it's not. Yeah, I mean that's the great tragedy of what's happened to radio is because it's owned by conglomerates and it's all tested and blah blah blah. You don't get the opportunity to really have a DJ, sort of put stuff out there that they like. But yeah, it is what it is. I mean that deep cuts is
mhm,
that Sirius station. I listen to that on occasion. They usually throw some interesting stuff on.
yeah. So getting back to the Barnstorm real quick, Turnstone, you had mentioned Mother Says, a couple of other standouts in my estimation. I'll Tell the World, just definitely a solid album, a great debut, and definitely good album there for me. That's number 5 for out of the Walsh catalog here, and now we're gonna go down to the number 4.
yeah, 4 for me. I got But Seriously, Folks from '78. Obviously, Life's Been Good was a big hit for off this album. You still hear that on the radio quite a bit today. Yeah, I mean, his guitar playing is really solid on here. He's got some good solos. I mean, other songs that kind of stuck out to me were like Over and Over, which is the lead off track on the album. That's pretty good. Indian Summer is a really solid track. Inner Tube. He's got the theme from Boat Weirdos, which is another one of his odd song titles again, but that's a pretty good track. And then, yeah, I mean, it's a short album at 36 minutes, but it's definitely, it doesn't have any filler on here for me, so it's pretty solid.
Okay. What about you, Tom? What do you got there?
In the eyes of the confessor.
Wow. I forgot about that.
I know. See?
Number 4?
Number 4.
Wow.
So you know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to finally get to my confessor story. I'm going to make a confession for the confessor. So my buddy John Kelly, who was a huge influence on me musically, but he won't listen to any of this, so I can talk about him freely. But yeah, I just remember going to John's house and always listening to records. There was a couple of records that stood out for me because there were songs that made us want to get the record. Now, one of them was the Dire Straits album that had Money for Nothing on it. I forget what the heck's the name of that record. Brothers in Arms. Okay. So like, I remember John got that record. He's like, oh my God, you got to hear the song. He opens up with, the Money for Nothing. And it's a really cool song. And then the rest of the album is like, okay,
Yeah.
I was like, damn, that's weird. Like, how can they have that one song that's so good? Now, I had a very similar experience with The Confessor, which I think is kind of most people's experience. You put it on, you got that intro to The Confessor. I mean, how is a wrestler not use that intro as their come in song, The Confessor? It's just such a great, it just builds all this energy and everything like that. And then, yeah, the rest of side 1 kind of lays a dud. But I feel like side 2 redeems the record because side 2 is good. But The Confessor as a song, to me, is just so powerful that it makes if you took The Confessor off that record, this would be the 21st record out of his catalog. It would be horrible. But The Confessor is a song I think is really good. I think maybe it's the tracking too. He just everything it just side one just kind of lays an egg. It's like you open up with your strongest cut and then you put some junk in it, and then side two is better. But I think so many people got lost after side one that they didn't realize that there was actually some pretty decent stuff on side two. I mean, side two is well, actually this says Confessor opens up side two. So maybe it is side one that's good. See, I always thought The Confessor was the first cut on side one. Am I wrong?
Yeah, the album opens up with Problems.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So that's yeah. See,
But
I don't know,
sometimes
man.
you don't know, because when you got the album, you're flipping on whatever side. You knew
Right.
the Confessor started off the side that you thought kind of faded at the end, so that must be side one that you like then.
You know what it is? And I own The Confessor on vinyl too, which is funny. So I should know this, but my eyesight's not that great anymore. I just think it's because my buddy John, when he played it for me, he played The Confessor first. That for all these years I thought that The Confessor was the first song
Yeah.
on the record, but it's not. But yeah, Confessor and then Rosewood Bitters. It's like, yeah, it's a Michael Stanley song and it's okay. But then, the other two are just awful. But I think side one is actually pretty good. I mean, yeah, I get the criticism of slow dancing and whatnot, but I don't know. I didn't think it was that horrific. But man, yeah, the song The Confessor, holy mackerel. Wow, this freaks me out. As I said, I listen to the record fairly often, considering how many records I have. And I've always thought that was side one with The Confessor on it. Thank you, Joseph. You've taught me something.
All right. Well, now I'm going to teach you about what my number 4 is here, which I would say this got a little tough here with the rankings, but all these albums, I would say that my number 1 is by far in between. There was no question, no doubt about it for my number 1. 2, 3, 4, depending on, the mood, I think it could change. But unfortunately on this day, now my number 4 is going to be The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get, which is a great album. I'm kind of surprised it didn't beat the other 2 that were ahead of it on my list here. But they're all just great albums, so I can't really, it's like pick your favorite child type situation, I guess. Even though I don't have any children. So Gold, Reach Gold, baby. Number 6 on the charts, the follow-up to Barnstorm, was also recorded at Caribou Ranch, which was that we didn't mention this, but Barnstorm was actually recorded as the first ever recording at Caribou Ranch, oddly enough. And that place, that studio had so many recordings there until it was damaged in 1985. I found this out. So between, Barnstorm 72 and 85, that there was a lot of amazing songs and albums that were recorded in that studio. So very interesting stuff here. We're going back in history. But obviously, I'd say the gem on the album, the best song, is How Can You Argue with Rocky Mountain Way? You hear that wherever you go. You'll hear it at the Eagles concert because Joe sings it there.
I spent the last year there.
But the lost gem on the album is actually Dreams. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this song. It's really a unbelievable song. Got the piano bass song. It was interesting in the fact that around the time of The Confessor, that tour, he was doing shows, and at that time he did like a longer set where he would do like a little, and I think we lost David, but I'm not sure. But he's doing like a set there where he would do songs that he wouldn't normally have played. So he's throwing out songs like Tomorrow. I have like a live recording of it somewhere. He's played Dreams, songs that he normally wouldn't be able to do, he said. So I think that was pretty cool in that respect there. That's how I fell in love with the song, because I got a live version of it where it just sounds incredible. And Meadows and Bookends are the other two on here that really really stand out for me. Oddly enough, in this album, Joe doesn't even sing on all the tracks. If you were familiar with that, the other two guys, Joe Vitale, the drummer, has two lead vocals credits, and then the bass player Kenny Passeri also sings on one song. So that kind of made it more of a band project in a way. Very interesting. Because
You
I
ever heard
never,
that song, that Joe Vitale song, "Lady on the Rock"? That's a great song too.
I'm not too familiar with that one.
He did a solo album, and it's the song's "Lady on the Rock." It got some airplay. You have to listen to it.
Interesting. I will. Um, and of course, Rocky Mountain Way was his commercial breakthrough. That song helped break everything, and it hit number 23 on the charts. So this album is a very significant album in the career of Joe Walsh here because it really got the ball rolling pretty good here for him. We're on number 3 now. Our top 3 all-time Joe Walsh albums. What do you got for number 3, David?
All right, yeah. Number 3, I have "So What" from 1974. Really solid album. I mean, "Song for Emma" is great. "Help Me Through the Night," "Welcome to the Club," they're all great songs. And then he did "Turn to Stone" again. He re-recorded it because it was previously on the Barnstorm album, which I don't know why he recorded it again, because I think the version on Barnstorm was perfectly fine, but it's definitely a classic for his catalog. So yeah, I mean, he's got Don Henley, I think Glenn Frey and Randy Meisner from the Eagles all sing backup on this album. So the seeds for the Eagles partnerships were planted even then. So it's a really solid album.
Definitely. What do you got for yours, number 3 there, Tom?
The smoker you drink, the player you get.
Uh-huh.
Not have much to add other than what you had, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rocky Mountain Way. I mean, it's yeah. This is the record that puts Joe Walsh on the map, as you said. All good stuff, but yeah, Meadows. I think Meadows is actually my favorite song on the record. Strangely, I mean, it's not a real rocker or anything, but it's just a really nice song.
Okay. All right. So now we are going to my number 3. And if you had a guess, you'd be maybe wrong, maybe right. But so what?
I know it's not The Confessor.
But it is So What?
So what?
1974, another gold album, reached number 11. And once again, like somebody had said there, I don't remember which one about the Turn to Stone. I'm not sure. It never says the reason why it was re-recorded. It's just a more polished version of the song. Originally featured on the Barnstorm album in a somewhat more riotous style, so it's more polished, is all it is. But no matter how you slice it, it still came up great. Both versions are awesome. No complaints here with that. And the interesting part on this album, I think County Fair, great song. Help Me Through the Night. As we mentioned, I believe that one is on the live album that he came out with. And he actually closes the album with Song for Emma. And if you guys are familiar with that, that was his Joe's. It was about his daughter who was actually unfortunately perished in a car crash weeks of her short couple weeks shy of her 3rd birthday. So unfortunately, you can see why Joe wrote such a touching song in her honor, written as a memorial there. And if you're familiar, when obviously Joe, no secret, Joe Walsh and Stevie Nicks were an item in the middle 80s there. She also sat in the co-producer's chair, even though she didn't get the credit for it on the Confessor, which maybe that's why that album is kind of weak in my estimation. But this would be she also wrote a song after visiting Emma's grave with him. And that's her famous song known as "Has Anyone Ever Written Anything for You?" So I thought that was pretty interesting how she took to heart with everything and came up with a song like that. Because if you're familiar with that song, that's a great song, very unheralded song through from her catalog there that ends up on one of her great albums there. Just some great stuff here. But other than that, it's another album that was produced with Bill Simchek, and they didn't record this one at Caribou though. At that point, I guess Joe just did his first two Barnstorms there, and at this point, he was out at the record plant in New York and L.A., and there's another one in California he was at. So that's where we stand with here, another ABC Dunhill release. And yeah, so that's what I got there for So What. And that takes us to the top two.
All right, my number 2 is Barnstorm from '72. I love this album a lot. I almost put it at my number 1, but it just missed. So I mean, Bird Call Morning is just a beautiful folk song that he put together. It's one of my favorite from his catalog. Yeah, I mean, he moved away from the hard rock and boogie sound of the James Gang and kind of went towards a more folk or acoustic oriented, almost kind of like a Laurel Canyon vibe to this album. And it's always really held up well for me. I mean, Kenny Passarelli's bass tones on this album are great. It's a great album all around.
Yep, definitely agree with that. Let's see what Tom has to say.
We're on number 2, right?
We sure are.
Yep.
Well, there goes the neighborhood.
Wow.
Have you guys already done this one?
I think, yeah, David did it.
Oh, David, you haven't yet?
No.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
Look at that, man. You and I might be having a little bit of synergy. You and I got to start teaming up on David now.
Oh, jeez.
Let's do that. This is a sentimental favorite. I just came out at a really good time for me in terms of when I was collecting records. And I remember him coming to town. I didn't see him, but I remember when he was coming to town as a solo artist. I just love every song on this record. Things is a great song. Down on the Farm. I mean, it's like typical Joe Walsh funniness, but it's got all that kind of, the country twanginess to it. That's a gas. Love a Life of Illusion. Man, my favorite tune though is Rivers of the Hidden Funk, baby. That's one of my probably top 5 Joe Walsh tunes too. It's just a catchy song. It's a blast. But I think this is a really strong record all the way around. And yeah, it's a shame he wasn't able to kind of catch a wave, put out a series of records that were quite this good. But man, I loved this one a lot.
Yep.
Oh, and there's Dallas recording from 1981 from this tour that is absolutely fantastic. They put it on CD. It was originally a King Biscuit Flower Hour. If anybody has not heard it, find it. It's fantastic. His playing, everything, set list, just fantastic. I think my favorite live recording by him.
Were you able to see him when he came to Salamanca?
Yeah, I think you and I were both there.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to confirm that. I
had seen him with the only times I've seen Joe is I saw him with Ringo's All-Star Band.
Wow.
And that's because, Todd was with him. So I had to see Todd, and Joe just happened to be there. It was actually Joe and Timothy B. Schmidt was in that, and Burton Cummings. It was a heck of a lineup. They didn't quite gel perfectly. I think some of the later Ringo's lineups gelled a little bit better, but yeah, that was the first time I saw him. But getting to see him solo at Salamanca was a gas. That was fantastic. That was a great show.
Yeah, and it was cool that he played Life of Illusion, because that's one of the few times I've seen him where he actually played that song live. So that was awesome. Definitely.
Yeah, very tight show. I mean, Joe's not a thrilling performer to watch per se, but he sounds excellent. I mean, he plays really, really well.
Yeah, I
And
thought that.
he's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a show that, out of all the times I've seen him, that's probably my favorite Joe Walsh show, I'd have to
Yeah.
say. And that was in support of the tour for the Analog Man, by the way, just so you remember.
Yeah, it was a
Yep.
great set list, though. I just remember
Yeah.
him really touching on all eras of his
Yep.
career
And he even
and just
played the
sounding really well.
Confessor.
Yeah, he played the
That
Confessor.
was great. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So your number 2 is my number 2. How does that sound? There goes the
Oh
neighborhood.
my God.
Yeah.
There goes the name for sure, Joe. This is twice today, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe even 3. Life of Illusion.
So-
Top 40 hit for him. Kind of brought him back after the demise of the Eagles. Yeah, I echo your sentiment on Down on the Farm. What an awesome song. I think Things is another one that's cool, stands out. And interestingly enough, the late David Lindley actually played on a couple tracks here, including that aforementioned Down on the Farm and Bones. So he had a
yeah,
good
it's his fiddle, right? Yeah.
yeah, he had a good array of guests on this album. So yeah, pretty cool. Obviously Felder played on it. And, he actually had Kenny Passarelli played a trumpet on it and a little guitar. George Chocolate Perry. So he had a lot of guests on here, which was pretty cool. Timothy B. Schmidt did backing vocals on Things. Really cool album. I was surprised at how it's just a solid album, but this is one of those albums that really, most people I think don't really, it's kind of an underrated album. It really is, especially when you compare it with these other albums, how, like me and you, we've got it like ranked higher than the Barnstorm albums pretty much. At
Yeah.
least I do. It just kind of surprising how good this album is. Cause this is like early 1981 we're talking. And, the radio didn't really do it too much. That's why only the one song got the airplay. But there definitely could have been a lot more songs on this album played, which would have probably propelled it. I'm not sure how much touring he did for this album, but we would not see. Well, this was the album that came just before. Well, this was his follow up to But Seriously, Folks, and then obviously the predecessor to You Bought It, You Name It. So that's where that one lies in the catalog here. So we're going to go down to our number 1, and we know one thing off the top of our heads. We're not all in agreement on this one, but let's see what David comes up with his number 1, if anybody's been paying attention.
Yeah, my number 1 is the smoker you drink, the player you get. I mean, I think it's probably the first Joe Walsh album I ever heard solo. So I love Rocky Mountain Way. I love Meadows. I love Bookends, Wolf, Midnight Moody's. Just every song on it. It's an album I could listen to over and over again. I just think the playing from all 4 guys is just top notch. So that's my number 1.
Yep, totally agree with the your take on it. I love that album. Like I said, it could have fallen anywhere from. It was number 4 for me, but it could have easily been as high as number 2. The only thing it wasn't going to beat was my number 1. But we'll get to that as soon as we get to Tom's number 1 here.
We got the same number 1. Come on, but seriously, you know that. But seriously, folks. Yeah, but seriously, folks. Wow. I mean, what can I mean? The first Joe Walsh song that I was ever aware of actually was not Rocky Mountain Way. Wow, it's a miracle. It was actually Life's Been Good. I mean, I remember when that thing was getting a lot of airplay, and just a fun song. I think there's an interesting message behind it too, just about the excesses of the rock and roll lifestyle and, poking fun of that. But man, all these other great tunes, Theme for Boat Weirdos, instrumental song, Over and Over, Secondhand Story, At the Station. I mean, just, I think what really makes this particular record my favorite is the performance. I feel like it's probably Joe's best vocal performance of any of his records. Notwithstanding the Eagles stuff, because he really, the Eagles, if there was anybody that knew how to get a great performance out of Joe, it was the Eagles. I mean, his material with the Eagles was just incredible. But in terms of his singing, his playing, the creativity, I mean, this again, we get kind of both the serious Joe, the singer songwriter Joe, we get the funny Joe, so it really just kind of encapsulates everything that we love about our buddy Joe.
Yep, and obviously, like you said, we got the same number one. This is the only Joe Walsh album that went platinum. It's his highest charting album at number 8. Yeah, life's been good. You can't go to any classic rock station without that song being on at some point. And you know what? I probably heard that song 1,000 times or more. And each time I hear it, I never want to change the dial. Sometimes you find a song, even no matter how many times you hear it, that maybe for whatever reason, you just don't get sick of it. And then there's other ones that you wish you never heard again. So it's just very strange, but that's one of those ones to me, no matter how many times I hear it, I just love it, and I'm probably more familiar with the Eagles version because it was on the live album, and that was the one that I heard first. So I was actually familiar with Rocky Mountain Way as the first Joe Walsh song for me. But Life's Been Good, definitely a close second. And like you mentioned,
it's just the thing about the studio version of Life's Been Good, though. It's just the way they had the acoustic guitars and the dramatic changes and the use of synthesizers. I mean, he just, he'll take the songs go in one direction and all of a sudden he just turns it on its head and don't, I go to parties. Yeah. I mean, it's a great, just the way it is just so well constructed. I would say, almost as well constructed as a song like, Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. There's probably somebody going out there going, what? How can you compare Joe Walsh to Queen? I just did. Okay. Get over it.
All right. So you had mentioned a couple of these other ones, man. I'll tell you, 2 of these songs they actually did on that live concert I was telling you about back in the mid '80s. There, he played Tomorrow and Indian Summer. What gems these songs are. Some of the best of his whole catalog. Secondhand Store. You also mentioned At the Station. Man, this album is just never ending. Just such a great album. No doubt. I mean, I knew as soon as I said, okay, we're going to do Joe Walsh, I knew right away what my number one was. I didn't even have to blink an eye. And sometimes you do, but this one's one of those ones that was a no doubt about it. And interesting thing also, if you're familiar, you're familiar with the song Thunder Island, by the way. You know that song?
Jay Ferguson?
Yeah, well, he actually plays keyboards on this whole album.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So you got some really good
Thunder Island.
Yeah,
that was like a one-hit wonder, huh?
Yeah, he's a great guy though. Obviously he played in a couple bands if you're familiar with his name and everything about him. But yeah, great guy. Thunder Island, an excellent song. You could kind of see, even though I don't think he had a hand in writing any of this album, but you can somehow he did actually theme from Boat Weirdos. He gets a writing credit. So I guess that's interesting. But pretty much all the songs were pretty much constructed by Joe Walsh. There's a guy named Mike Murphy who wrote Secondhand Store with him, and Vitali wrote At the Station with him. But other than that, it's all been Joe, and maybe that's he was at a writing peak at this point, because he was on fire with the Eagles for the Hotel California album, and then the Eagles didn't make another album again until '79, the long run. So there was a period in there. That's when he worked on this album, and maybe working with those other guys in the Eagles helped inspire him more for his solo work. Because these are definitely probably the best collection of songs I think he wrote throughout his whole career, in my estimation. So excellent catalog. It was great to finally get to talk about this one. Thoroughly enjoyed this one. I like how pretty much all of us were pretty much in the same ballpark on a lot of this catalog for once. So that was good job on your guys' part. Obviously, we rank them on how we see them, and everybody doesn't see everything the same way. But I thought this one probably was a more cohesive ranking that we've ever had out of any of these bands.
Yeah.
And that concludes our ranking of Joe Walsh. We got the cover here of probably his most famous album cover. And we just want to also give a special thanks to David Hens from Music and Other Drugs and Tom Jennings from the Niagara Gazette, among many other publications. Enjoy till our next time.